It was a typical morning in one of the most exclusive luxury watch boutiques in the world. The kind of place where time itself seemed to stand still, and the air felt thick with elegance. Beautiful people roamed the pristine halls, their whispers barely audible over the soft tick-tock of some of the rarest timepieces known to man. Everything was polished to perfection. But no one, not even the store's employees, could have ever predicted the shocking scene about to unfold. In the middle of the afternoon rush, a man entered the boutique, unnoticed at first. Dressed casually in a gray hoodie and sunglasses, he moved with the grace of someone who didn't need to announce his presence. At first, he was just another face in the crowd, a visitor from the shadows. But what happened next would become a story the boutique would never forget. Keanu Reeves, the beloved actor known for his calm demeanor and almost saintly presence, had just stepped inside. No one recognized him immediately. No one, that is, except for a single employee who had just started his shift that day. A young man, eager to prove himself, ready to enforce the store's rigid rules with an iron fist. And Keanu, simply looking to browse, would quickly become the victim of those very rules. The moment of tension began with something small, an innocuous question. But what followed was nothing short of a disaster. The young employee, a stickler for protocol, misjudged the situation in a way that would send shockwaves through the store. He told the man in the hoodie, Keanu Reeves, to leave. He didn't know who he was talking to, but the mistake he made would haunt him for the rest of his life. Minutes later, as Keanu walked out the door with a calm, almost sad smile, the reality of the mistake would hit the young employee like a freight train. The man's heart sank. He hadn't just kicked out anyone. He had just made an unforgivable error with one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood. What happened in the minutes that followed would prove that even the most confident, well-intentioned individuals can make mistakes. And sometimes, those mistakes can change everything. It was a moment that seemed like it was made for a movie, one of those surreal, cringe-worthy scenes that you'd never believe if it weren't caught on camera. The young employee, whose name was Mark, had been working at the luxury watch store for only a few months. It was his first big shift without his supervisor present, and he was determined to prove he could handle the responsibility. The store's rules were strict. Absolutely no one, no matter who they were, could enter without following the process. It was about image, exclusivity, and making sure every visitor felt like they belonged in the world of high-end luxury. The clientele didn't just expect great service, they demanded it. And Mark, a stickler for rules, was all too eager to enforce them. Keanu had entered the store like a ghost. He was no stranger to low-key entrances. After all, Keanu had spent decades cultivating a reputation of being down-to-earth, humble, and seemingly immune to the celebrity trappings that others were so keen to flaunt. But Mark, he wasn't looking for humility that day. He was looking for violations. And Keanu, by entering in a hoodie, looking more like a regular guy than the Hollywood legend he was, had already triggered an alarm bell in Mark's mind. Keanu strolled past the display cases, admiring the intricate design of a few luxury timepieces. But Mark, from behind the counter, was watching every move. Keanu's mere presence in the store was already unsettling to him. Mark was accustomed to seeing only the wealthiest individuals in the city, those with tailored suits and expensive accessories who made a point of drawing attention. Keanu, on the other hand, blended into the background as if he were just another customer. And that, to Mark, felt wrong. It didn't align with the unspoken rule that only the elite could purchase these watches. Mark decided to confront the man, though, at this point, he didn't yet realize who he was addressing. "Excuse me, sir," Mark said, his voice firm and official. "You can't just wander around here without checking in first. This is a private showroom. I'll have to ask you to leave unless you follow the procedure." Keanu turned slowly, his face expressionless. There was no surprise, no anger, just a quiet resignation in his gaze. "I'm just looking around," he replied softly, almost apologetically, as though he were asking for permission to be in a space he clearly belonged to. But Mark didn't budge. The rules were the rules, and Mark's sense of duty to uphold them was stronger than his ability to see beyond the surface. "I'm sorry, sir," Mark said again, more forcefully this time. "You need to leave. I can't let you stay unless you comply with the procedures. This is a luxury store." Keanu didn't react with frustration, as some might have expected. There was no storming out, no dramatic outburst. Instead, Keanu nodded, his eyes meeting Mark's for a split second before he turned and walked calmly toward the door. A few onlookers who had noticed the exchange watched in stunned silence, wondering if something had gone horribly wrong. But no one could have predicted what was about to happen next. Mark, standing there, felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins as he watched Keanu leave. He was proud of himself. He'd enforced the rules, didn't let anyone get away with anything. But almost immediately, as the door clicked shut behind Keanu, a feeling of dread crept in. That calmness. That quiet dignity. It stuck with Mark. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out, his eyes scanning the notifications. It was a message from his manager. It read, "Did you just kick Keanu Reeves out of the store?" Mark froze. His blood went cold. It didn't take long for him to realize the gravity of his mistake. He'd kicked out Keanu Reeves, the actor who had been a household name for decades, known for his humility, kindness, and legendary roles in films like The Matrix, John Wick, and countless others. The very person who was beloved by fans around the world. A sinking feeling gripped him, and he could feel the judgment of everyone around him as reality set in. He hadn't just asked a random person to leave. He had just kicked one of the world's most famous stars out of the place. He stood there, frozen, his mind racing. The thoughts came fast. What had I just done? Why didn't I recognize him? I've ruined my career. He felt the weight of every passing second as it dragged on, a sharp contrast to the light-heartedness of the moment before. His boss would be furious. Social media would erupt. He would be the guy who turned away Keanu Reeves. Mark's heart pounded in his chest as he scrambled to think of a way to fix it. He dashed to the door, but Keanu was already gone. His eyes scanned the street outside for a sign of the man in the hoodie, but there was nothing. Just then, the reality of his blunder fully hit. He wasn't just ashamed of his actions, he was terrified of the consequences. What was he going to do? But as the minutes ticked by, something remarkable happened. The young employee realized the true power of humility and grace. Instead of lashing out, Keanu had simply walked away, never once raising his voice or losing his cool. And in that moment, Mark began to understand that Keanu had more dignity in that single moment than he could ever hope to have in a lifetime. Mark could only hope, in that sea of regret, that somehow, just somehow, he could fix his mistake. But in the world of luxury, time moves quickly, and so do opportunities. The question was, would Mark get another chance? The minutes dragged on as Mark stood by the entrance, his mind reeling. The store had fallen into an eerie silence, the tension so thick it felt suffocating. He couldn't shake the image of Keanu, walking out of the boutique without a word, as if he were just another faceless customer. Mark had made a mistake, a huge one, and now he was starting to see the full weight of what he'd done. He hadn't just lost a sale or upset a customer. He had disrespected someone who could have changed the trajectory of his career with a simple word. As the minutes passed, Mark paced back and forth, his heart racing with panic. He needed to fix this. But how? Was there even a chance Keanu would return? Did the world-renowned actor even care about a small incident like this, or was this the kind of thing that could easily be brushed off? Just as Mark felt the pressure closing in around him, the unthinkable happened. The door to the boutique opened again. The sound of the bell above the door rang, and Mark froze in place, hoping, praying, that it wasn't just another customer. He looked up, his eyes scanning the figure entering, and there, standing in the doorway, was Keanu Reeves. Mark's breath caught in his throat. This was the moment. This was his chance. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew one thing for sure. This was the moment that would define his career. Keanu stepped in slowly, looking around the store with the same quiet calm that had marked his first visit. But this time, there was something different in the air. It wasn't the cold, impersonal atmosphere of a high-end boutique. It was something else, something warmer, more inviting. Mark could feel his heart racing as Keanu walked toward him, and the weight of his earlier mistake came crashing down. The young employee had no idea what to say. He could feel his palms sweating, his throat dry. Should he apologize? Should he try to explain himself? Was it too late to make things right? He stood frozen, unsure of how to proceed. But Keanu, ever the picture of humility, didn't wait for Mark to find his words. Instead, he approached him with a quiet smile, his eyes kind. The calmness that Keanu exuded in every moment had a way of putting people at ease, even when the tension was unbearable. "I didn't expect this," Keanu said softly, his voice carrying a weight of understanding. "But I appreciate you standing your ground. I get it, this is your job." Mark blinked in disbelief. Keanu had returned, not in anger, but with a sense of quiet understanding. The actor wasn't here to make a scene or demand an apology. He wasn't here to shame Mark for his mistake. He was here to teach him something. Something Mark wasn't prepared for, but something he would never forget. "I'm sorry," Mark stammered, his voice shaky. "I didn't realize." Keanu raised his hand, stopping him. "No need to apologize. You were just doing your job. I've been in your shoes before, you know." Mark blinked again, completely caught off guard. Keanu Reeves, the calm, unflappable movie star, had been in his shoes? Yes, Keanu continued, his eyes now filled with something deeper, something wiser. I've had people misjudge me, think they know who I am just by the way I look, the way I dress. It happens all the time. But the truth is, you never really know anyone, not until you take the time to understand them. You weren't wrong to follow the rules. I just wish you'd known that sometimes, rules aren't the only thing that matter. Mark felt the weight of Keanu's words settle deep within him. The simple truth in those words was almost overwhelming. In a world where rules and appearances meant everything, Keanu was reminding him that kindness, humility, and understanding were just as powerful. They were the things that transcended all the material wealth and status in the world. The tension in the room seemed to dissipate as Keanu smiled, the kindness in his expression softening the air around them. "It's okay," Keanu said. "You didn't know. But now you do." Mark stood there, his mind spinning. What had just happened? What was this lesson that Keanu had just imparted to him? He had expected anger, frustration, maybe even a reprimand. Instead, he had been offered understanding and forgiveness, something he would have never expected from a star of Keanu's caliber. It was humbling, to say the least. For a moment, there was silence between them. Mark, still processing the weight of the conversation, didn't know what to say next. But Keanu, as always, broke the silence with a gentle smile. "You know," Keanu said, "I was really hoping to find the perfect watch today. Something simple, something meaningful. But I think the real gift today was meeting you, Mark." Mark was speechless. Keanu wasn't just talking about watches or material things. He was talking about the connection between people, the importance of learning from one another, and the power of human understanding. It was more than Mark could have ever expected. And as Keanu walked out of the store for the second time that day, this time with a wave of kindness and a promise to return, Mark stood there, transformed. The lesson had been delivered, and it was one he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Keanu Reeves hadn't just come back to buy a watch. He had come to teach Mark a lesson that no amount of luxury could ever provide. The true value of life, of people, was not in rules, appearances, or wealth. It was in kindness, humility, and understanding. Mark, his heart now full, watched Keanu disappear into the bustling city streets. And for the first time that day, he felt at peace. Whatever happened next, he knew he would carry that lesson with him. And for Mark, that was enough to change everything. As Keanu's figure disappeared into the city's hustle, Mark stood motionless, caught in a moment of profound realization. The tension that had once choked the air around him was now gone, replaced by a calmness he had never expected to find in a luxury watch store. He wasn't just relieved, he was changed. The encounter with Keanu had shaken him to his core. It had revealed something to him, a truth that no rulebook could teach, no expensive watch could encapsulate, and no material possession could replace. It wasn't just about the mistake he had made. It was about the kindness and humility that Keanu had shown him, despite the awkwardness and the mistake. It was about how the actor had responded with understanding instead of judgment. And more than that, it was the lesson that rules, no matter how rigid or prestigious, can never substitute for humanity. A single moment of connection, a moment of shared understanding, could change the trajectory of a life more than any luxury item ever could. Mark stood there in the boutique, almost in a daze. He thought back to his earlier moments of arrogance, the assumptions he had made about Keanu based on his fame and appearance. The star of countless movies, known for his zen-like composure, had shown him the true value of wisdom in those very qualities. Keanu's presence had reminded Mark that beneath the glitz of wealth and status, the things that mattered most were the things we often overlooked: kindness, humility, and understanding. As Mark slowly began to regain his composure, a sense of purpose began to form within him. He knew he had to change the way he saw the world. It wasn't just about making sales or following the rules. It was about connecting with people, understanding them beyond appearances, and acting with empathy in every situation. The world wasn't divided into categories of wealthy customers or anonymous strangers. It was a place where each encounter had the potential to teach, to grow, to evolve. With newfound clarity, Mark felt a deep sense of gratitude for the lesson Keanu had delivered. It wasn't something that could be bought or sold, it was something that would stay with him forever. That, he realized, was the real gift Keanu had given him. And so, as Mark watched the last glimpses of Keanu fade into the distance, a quiet thought echoed in his mind. It's not what you have, but how you treat others that defines who you are. From that day forward, Mark was no longer just an employee working at a high-end boutique. He became someone who valued every person who walked through the door, not by the price of their watch or the prestige of their status, but by their humanity. He looked at every interaction as an opportunity to connect, to share, and to learn, because in those moments of connection, he had found the true essence of life. Mark's encounter with Keanu had left an indelible mark on his soul. It wasn't just about watching someone walk into a store or making a sale. It was about the realization that sometimes, the most valuable things in life aren't the ones you can buy. They're the ones that you carry with you in your heart, and the ones that you pass on to others through kindness, understanding, and humility. As the store's bell rang again with the entry of another customer, Mark greeted them with a warmth that was born of something deeper than duty or obligation. It was born of a profound respect for humanity and the realization that each person, no matter who they were, deserved to be treated with dignity and kindness. And that, he knew, was the gift that could change not only his life, but the lives of everyone he encountered.